Nation, good morning, everyone. It is a Sunday morning coming at you from the mobile studios with another pop-up live here at NBT Nation. Today, my friends, we are going to talk about how do you measure, how do you evaluate, how do you determine that your training session worked, that you've invested this time and energy, you delivered a corporate training session, you delivered some e-learning modules, you put out a new guide, an infographic, you did a workshop, a program, a boot camp, whatever. How do you know that it worked? And that is a critical part of corporate training. Just delivering knowledge and everybody clapping at the end. Okay, nice. But did it help people grow? And did it help move the business forwards? Those are some important questions that if we're not answering, we're not doing our job as a corporate trainer. So let's dive in to how do you understand, how do you measure, how do you evaluate that your corporate training session worked? If you think or if you find this content interesting and helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so we can keep making great content like this. But NBT Live, how do you know that your training session worked? Get a little cup of creator fuel here before we get going. All right, so there's a laundry list of different approaches you can use. You can pick and choose the ones that make sense for you and your organization, and you can mix and match or use all of these. So hopefully this will help. Let's dive in. Number one, if you do a training of some sort, whether it be instructor-led sessions or even an e-learning module, at the end of that, ask for instant feedback from your audience. And what I like to do is something very simple: green, yellow, red, frowny face, flat face, smiley face, something very basic and simple, but ask your audience at the very end, hey, based on what we've just got done talking about, based on the session objective and what you've learned over the last hour, the last couple days, give me instant feedback. Green, yellow, red. Was it a good use of your time? Did we meet the session objective? Do you have new skills that you can use? Yellow means, yeah, it was pretty good. It was nice, but there were some things lacking. I would have liked to have done this or that. Or red, this was a complete waste of my time. And ask for that feedback right away. And they'll tell you. They will tell you, and you will at least get a subjective snapshot from your audience very, very quickly. And it's a lot better feedback than them just clapping their hands and saying, good job, as they walk out the room. Again, you can do this for sessions, instructor-led sessions, in person or virtually, or at the end of an e-learning module. Give us your quick feedback and give people the permission to give you negative feedback, because they might be a little resistant of doing that. So number one tip, ask for the feedback right away at the end of whatever the learning activity is. The other thing I would recommend is that you self-evaluate at the end of a training session. Let's see, somebody's jumped on. Blue-ish ever? Oh gosh, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Welcome joining us. We're talking about how do you evaluate, how do you measure that your corporate training session worked? Was it effective? The second tip, at the end of a training session, give yourself instant feedback. You know in your heart of hearts. Blue, let's see here. Blue is here. Oh, okay, VR. My apologies, Blue. It's lovely to have you with us. At the end of a training session, as the instructor, as the person delivering the training, do some self-evaluation. You know instantly whether it worked or it didn't work. You know instantly whether that learning game, activity, role play, simulation, hands-on, you know whether it worked. If it's a virtual session, you know whether you had technical glitches, whether people, passed the quiz at the end, whether they did what they were supposed to do, the vibe in the room, you know it. So ask the participants for feedback at the end of the learning thing, and then give yourself feedback. Those are two quick things you can do very, very easily. And you should always be evaluating yourself based on the session objective. Did I meet that session objective? All right, some other folks. Hey, Jerry, nice to have you out there. Screen name Nuke D. Jerry's your name. Great to have you with us. Great to see folks coming into the live here. We're talking about how do you evaluate? How do you know whether your corporate training works? So ask for feedback from the session participants. Ask for and give yourself feedback right away. Excellent. All right, third tip. A couple days later, ask your participants for feedback again in a more formalized survey. Use a survey to evaluate, did they feel it was effective? And you could structure your questions. And what I would really do is focus in on what are the negatives, what didn't work, what didn't meet the needs, what could have been better to meet the session objective. Same thing applies for an e-learning module. What could have been included, or how could we have done this differently? But a couple days after the session or the learning activity, solicit feedback a second time from your audience and do it in a structured way and really lean into those negatives, what didn't work. And that'll tell you very quickly. If you ask, hey, give us a bunch of feedback and really tell us what we could have improved, done differently, how could it have been better? And they say, no, it was perfect. Now you know. If they give you a full novel of a million things that could have been better that were legitimate feedbacks, okay, now you know that maybe your session didn't go so well. Maybe your e-learning module is a little bit off base or what have you. Maybe the program needs to be reevaluated or refreshed. So there's another technique for you. Now we're going to really get into the meat of the matter. How do you figure out whether your corporate training efforts actually had an effect and paid off? I'm coming to you from the mobile studios today. Great to have you all out there with us today. If you're finding this interesting, give it a thumbs up, sub to the channel, drop some more comments in there. It's great to see Blue and Jerry out there joining us. Yeah, that was a coffee, Blue. Creator fuel, I like to call it. It's the part of the world I'm in. It's still early morning. I figured we needed a little more coffee. If you all are enjoying a breakfast beverage or whatever time it is in your part of the world, let me know what your beverage of choice is. So, all right, great. So we're talking about how do you evaluate whether your corporate training session actually paid off, and we've done some subjective measurements. Ask for feedback right away, ask for feedback a little bit later, self-evaluate right away, self-evaluate a little later, a couple days in, let the rush of the session or the rush of the training event go by, and then do some self-evaluation later on. All right, metrics. How are we going to measure that this training effort was effective, that it was useful, that it really met the session objective and it tied to whatever the big picture business strategy is? How do we measure that? Well, it all starts with having the metrics, the numbers, the result that you want all figured out long before you deliver the session. So it seems a little bit weird, but when you sit down and somebody says, hey, we need to do a training, what is the outcome that that individual wants? Really dial that in. Then as you're developing the training, figure out, how are we going to measure that this training was effective? I'll give you some practical examples. So maybe you're training salespeople. The goal would be, we want our salespeople to have 10 new sales conversations every week. And the training session is on how to get face-to-face meetings with potential clients. Well, you can set a metric. Did our salespeople achieve 10 meetings a week after the training? And then track that for a period of days, weeks, months, quarters, whatever. And you'll know soon enough. Did you start hitting 10 visits a week based on the training that was provided? You can set metrics for productivity increases, for efficiency increases. Oh, hey, Blue, great question. When did I start a channel? We'll take a little brief detour there. Started it, I don't know, several years ago or some period of time ago now. Did some videos early on and then it kind of went dormant, and then have really started focusing on YouTube here in the last year, 6 months to a year or so. So it's been there for a little bit, but really been paying attention to it and focusing on it here just very recently. Hopefully you're enjoying this content, and if there are topics you'd like us to add to the channel, let me know. Drop me another comment down below. Hopefully that's helpful, Blue. Yes, Lynn, hey, Lynn, great to see you. Are you getting sound on your end? Hopefully you all are getting sound. I've been going for 10 minutes, and if it's been, if I've been muted, I'm going to be horribly embarrassed. My sound should be on, Lynn. Leave me a comment if you are not able to hear me. That would be horrific. I'll have to start all over again. It's low. Okay, let's see here. Get the volume turned up maybe a little bit. I'm doing this from my mobile device, so bear with me. The camera's going to move a little bit. My volume buttons have been a little wonky. How about that, Lynn? Is that a little better? Is that a bit louder for you, I hope? Let me know. Leave me a comment below. But it's wonderful to see you, Lynn. Always makes my day a little happier. Excellent. Okay, great. So we are talking, how do you measure that your training is effective, that it actually had an effect? It helped people grow, and it is moving the business forwards. And it gets down to the age-old thing. Have something to measure. You don't get what you don't measure. It's like if you're going to get physically fit and you want to lose weight, setting a goal for how many pounds or kilograms a week or a month or a year that you want to lose helps you focus your activity. Training works the same way. I used the example before, if you're training salespeople, have a goal based on whatever the topic of that session is, and then measure it afterwards. But those metrics are super key. The nice thing though, it takes some time to think about, what are we going to measure to tell us that this training worked? It takes some time to kind of think about that and figure it out, and not just pick some easy thing, but it's well worth it. You've now got something to measure, the point of this live. You have something to go back to the leadership with to say, hey, not only here is my course design, but here is what I'm going to measure to ensure that this was a good training. Do you agree? Would that be helpful? Is that moving the needle on a topic that you care about? You can have the conversation with the leader of what are the metrics they're measuring if you don't already know. So getting those metrics figured out ahead of time is important to the health of the training in general. It's important as you're building the session, because once they say, this is what's important to me, this is what I'm measuring, you can align your training, you can synchronize your training with that to make sure you're training on what they feel is important, plus everything else that you put together. So how do you know that your training worked? It all boils down to have something to measure. You can measure lots of different things. You can measure activity very, very easily. So if you do a training on a new work process, you can start to measure things like, how many times was that work process completed? How many times was it completed accurately? What was the improvement rate if the training had something to do with improving the process or mistakes that were happening with the process? What was the improvement in the time to complete that that procedure or that process? So you can start to measure lots and lots of different things, and that's how you know your training worked. You did the training, and now you have some measurable outcome from it. So hopefully you found that helpful. Now, getting all the metrics figured out and dialed in, that's the topic of a totally different live, a totally different video, or else we'll be here for 4 or 5 more hours, because it gets a lot more complicated. But have those metrics, have them figured out ahead of time. Include that in your design. The same thing if you're building an e-learning module. What is the outcome you want to achieve? And now you have something to measure. All right, great to see. We still have folks with us, which is fantastic. All right, when you think about metrics, the other thing I wanted to make sure I included is that you think about your metrics when you measure is important. So do you measure in the short term, hours, days, weeks after the training? Do you measure maybe medium term? So you measure shortly after the session, then you measure again, maybe a month later, two later, and then long term. And that's all very situationally dependent, but putting some thought into not only what am I measuring to indicate that this training effort was successful, when am I measuring it? And you should be thinking about putting as much time into the measurement piece as you are the delivery piece or the instructional design piece. So metrics, great way, and that'll tell you in black and white, was there an effect from your training session? Okay, we are covering a lot of ground here in this Sunday morning pop-up live. Hopefully you all are finding this interesting. I'm seeing some thumbs up, which is great if you find this helpful. If you do, please do that. Keep leaving those comments down below. Subscribe to the channel. Great to have you along with us. We're talking about how do you measure that your training actually worked. Observable behavior changes. You should observe a behavior change because you conducted this corporate training session, if that's what the session was about. Not everything can be measured. And so can you see and observe a behavior change if your training doesn't have a quantifiable outcome, or you can do that in addition to the quantifiable outcome. So we talked about salespeople a little bit ago. We're going to do some training, help them to be able to get face-to-face meetings, and now they are getting more face-to-face meetings, yes, no, maybe, and the number of meetings getting scheduled is increasing. My training worked because the number of meetings scheduled went up by 30%. Easy peasy. But you should also see the behavior change. As you talk to your frontline salespeople, they should start to say things like, yeah, I'm getting more meetings. You should start to see an increase in the number of meeting reports that your managers are reviewing. When you go to sales meetings or you have a daily sales huddle, your salespeople should be not complaining about setting up meetings more. The number of complaints should go down. Oh, it's so tough to get meetings. That should start to decrease. So you can also measure behavior changes as a way to evaluate whether your training session worked. I'll give you another example, customer service training. I'm looking at my notes here, just past the camera here. So maybe you're going to do some customer service training in your organization and you want to improve the customer experience. You want your customer service people to be happier, friendlier, more personable, less robotic, whatever. So you do some training on how to be a better customer service person, to be more friendly, more cheerful, chipper, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's tough to measure a happiness. We were 27% happier. You can't measure that neatly on some graph, but you could observe the behavior. You could listen to the recorded phone interactions between the customer service people and their customers. You can listen as the manager and go, oh yeah, oh wow, yeah, Bob is suddenly a lot happier. Bob is a lot friendlier. Bob is, his customers are saying, thanks so much, Bob, I really appreciate the help at the end of the conversation. So you could listen for those observables. If you're training a medical staff, and yes, you can measure things like length of time in the waiting room or number of patients, procedures completed on a given shift or whatever. You could do satisfaction of, give the thumbs up for the service, etc. But you should also have that observable behavior change. You should hear your patients saying, oh, thank you so much, this was really great, or filling out more feedback surveys, or just being more happy to be involved in the medical system, et cetera. I think you're getting the point there. Yeah, possibly measure it using a Likert scale. Great idea there, Lynn. I love that. I love that. Leave me some more comments down below there, Lynn. It kind of expand on that idea of using a Likert scale. for behavior changes. It kind of gets back to my first point. If you're at the end of a training session, ask for some feedback immediately. Green, yellow, red, was this good, kind of good, or not so good? Smiley face, frowny face, flat face. Those like kind of quick feedbacks. But Lynn, tell me more about using a Likert scale to measure those observable behavior changes. Love that. Love that a lot. So observable behavior changes are another way to measure whether your training was effective. You could even do something like putting together a scorecard for your field managers to observe those behavior changes. So sometimes in corporate training roles, you have a very small corporate training team that's sort of attached at the headquarters level, and you might have different locations around the country or across the planet, or you just have a large company and there's 3 corporate trainers for 5,000 people. So the corporate trainers can't be everywhere following up all the time. So another way to measure is build a scorecard for your field managers. So now you not only have the organized metrics where you're measuring the outcomes on a short-term, medium-term, long-term basis, collating and collecting all that data. You could do the same thing with observable behavior changes, get all that data, combine that together, and then you can give the managers who interact with the people who were trained a scorecard of what to look for to indicate that that training was successful. All right, got another comment here. Got to put on the old cheaters here. Yeah, measure behavior, attitudes, frequency. Yeah, awesome. Love that, Len. Totally agree. But use scorecards and bring the managers in to help you evaluate whether your training was effective. Because if you don't, if you just do the training, send the participants back to do their daily work, your managers are either going to hear that, oh yeah, that training was great, I really enjoyed it, I learned 1 or 2 little quick things, and then that is going to create a perception in the manager's mind that that training was really good, whether it was or wasn't, or whether it really affected anything. If the participant comes back and tells the manager, oh, that was really garbage, that was a waste of my time, whether or not it actually, the material is going to affect the outcome long term, that's what the manager is going to think. Oh, well, I sent Bob and Sally to this training with Adam, and they came back saying, it was okay. And now the manager thinks the training is okay. So give the manager a scorecard of how to measure. Give them the questions to ask the participants. Not just, hey, how was that training? But what did you learn in that training that you can use right away? What did you learn in that training that I can help you with as your manager? What did you learn about in that training that maybe you and I, as manager and frontline worker, we need to talk about more? I need to explain in greater detail. What did you learn in that training that I could provide you more resources on, or I could point you in a direction to understand that topic more? You could give the manager questions to ask, like, what is your plan on how you're going to use this training going forwards? You could put a scorecard together that maybe the manager then, so those are all kind of questions you would ask shortly after the training is done. Then you could have a scorecard of questions to ask maybe a few hours, few days, few weeks, few months later. And on that scorecard, you're asking questions like, compared to before the training, how is it to complete this process? Is it faster, the same, or slower? Compared to before the training, are you making less mistakes, the same amount of mistakes, or more mistakes? Is the process, are customers happier with the process based on the training that you had 3 weeks ago? How many times have you used the skills that you learned in that training session in the last 3 weeks, or the last month, or the last 2 months, whatever? So give them the scorecards and the questions to ask either right in the aftermath of the training or sometime later, or both, if it makes sense. And now you're guiding the field manager to ask the right questions, and you're getting more usable data. So you could have the just the black and white metrics of measuring outcomes in terms of business situations. You could have the behavior changes that either you as the trainer or the field manager or the organization is observing. And now you have field managers having actual productive conversations with your participants, gathering real data, and then reporting that back to the training team. So just some different ways to think about how to put all of this together. All right, 2 more to go here on this Pop-Up Sunday Live. Great to have everybody with us. Lynn, thank you so much for being a participant. Absolutely appreciate all your support, and it's always great to see you out there, my friend. Hopefully you're having a good holiday season. Hard to believe Christmas is next week. I mean, holy moly, hard to believe. And then it'll be New Year's, and then it'll be another year. We'll have gone by. Thank you. Yeah, I'm ready for the break. I will be taking some time off over Christmas and the New Year's week, and I'm really looking forward to that. So in BT Live, we're talking about how do you evaluate that your training worked. 2 more quick tips. One is talk to the field managers. Make sure that you are having a dialogue with those field managers. Make sure that you as the corporate trainer, or if you're in maybe you're in a subject matter expert role and you've been asked to deliver a training, but you're not a full-time trainer. Training is just one of many things you do. Go have that conversation with the field manager and ask them the questions. Has your team been using the information? Has your team used this specific piece of information? And give them something specific that the participants of the training should have started doing, should start exhibiting, knowledge that they should have. Give them something very tangible, not just go up to them 2 weeks later and go, hey, what did they think about the training? And then the manager goes, oh, that was great. But hey, has everybody on your team started doing X? And then the manager's going to go, well, yeah, 30%, yeah, those 3 did, those 5 didn't, whatever. But give them some concrete questions as to what to evaluate. Give them ask them, hey, who on your team is still having a problem or still struggling with fill in the blank? But have those good conversations with field managers. They'll tell you very, very quickly, especially if you give them those scorecards of what to look for after the training ends. Pardon me, excuse me. But at the bare minimum, you should have that open dialogue. And then lastly, look at, well, actually, I'm going to sneak in a bonus one. Is that okay, Lynn? I'm going to sneak in a bonus extra tip. So this is the second last tip, the penultimate tip. Talk to your end users. Same thing as the managers. Go talk to the end users, maintain a dialogue, do a follow-up session. Let's say you do a 3-day workshop this month. Maybe give them 3-4 weeks of using the information and then have a quick 15-minute, 30-minute virtual check-in session. Or maybe you're going to do a complete e-learning course and you're going to roll that out as a big initiative to a particular department or to a particular team. Roll that out and then start your conversations with the end users at the appropriate amount of time. A quick little virtual session, just make your rounds and talk face to face, what have you. Follow up. Yeah, follow up. Super practical approach. It's super easy to do, and I got to tell you, it's a mistake I've made countless times. I'm ashamed to admit, where you do a training session, everybody leaves and says, "Hey, great job, Adam," and it's like, "Woo, yay, we're done," and then you're on to the next thing, and that group, it kind of gets, it's like the circus left town, it's just, and then you never really follow up with them. So that's lesson learned from my experience. Don't make the mistakes, NBT Nation, that I have made. But it's super practical. It doesn't have to be complicated, especially in today's environment. You could do a quick Teams meeting or a quick virtual meeting, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour at the most, do a quick follow-up. If you have a small, maybe it's a small late stage startup and there's only 30 people and you're all same in the same space. I mean, heck, you could do it over coffee at the coffee station. But following up with the end users, they will tell you if you ask good, pointed, detective type questions of your end users in a friendly, personable way, they will tell you very quickly whether they actually retained that information, and more importantly, are they using the information? The second you start talking to them and they're like, oh, yeah, that was really good. And you say, could you give me an example of how you've used this information? And they go, uh, well, you know that they're putting you on. They didn't really actually start using their information. Compared to you're walking through the shared spaces, maybe grabbing a coffee, and they come up to you and going, Adam, I got to tell you, I used that thing that we learned about. It was fantastic. This was happening. I used what we learned, and now that's happening, and everything is wonderful and great. So ask those pointed, really good detective type questions of your end user. Hey, give me a practical example of how you've used this information. Hey, how much quicker has this process become for you? Or has that come for you? Even if it's just anecdotally, tell me a little bit more. Hey, how many times on your group have you been able to resolve this issue based on what we've learned? Whatever, but ask them a tangible question. So that is really good. The bonus tip, we're getting down to the end of our pop-up live here on a Sunday in BT Nation. If you found this helpful, you're maybe watching on the replay and you've made it this far, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment after the fact, or better yet, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss this next time. The bonus tip, talk to your end customers. Talk to the end customers to see if they have noticed an effect based on this training. So you could do something like maybe you're training a shipping department in a manufacturing setting and there's been some issues with shipping or something, and you do a training. Maybe you send a survey out to your customers. Have you seen an improvement in our shipping process lately? You could put that together super easily electronically. Heck, you could even do an old school piece of paper in a box. And even if you only get 1 or 2% response rate, it's at least giving you some information. Or you could combine it. You could combine the metrics. We want to see a reduction in our shipping complaints, or we want to see a reduction in how many times we have to do UPS red to solve a shipping issue. You can combine that with talking to the end customers. So talk to those end customers. I talked about, oh, great to have you back with us, Blue. Great to have you back. Blue is here, and Blue's back again. That's fantastic. Blue, we are talking about a bonus tip. How do you measure that your training was effective, your corporate training? Ask your end customer, and they will absolutely tell you. They will absolutely tell you. We talked about maybe a shipping situation in a manufacturing environment. Safety, the end customer is your internal team. You could talk to them. Maybe you're a software company, and you do programming on a contract type basis. You could have some meetings with the clients that you contract with. Start talking to their CEO of your customer or some C-suite person or the project owner at the customer site. Hey, have you seen any changes with XYZ as it relates to this training? Have you seen an improvement on ABC based on this training? They'll tell you. They will absolutely tell you. So talk to your customers, and they, frankly, in a corporate setting, are the final arbiter of whether your training actually worked. You could even go as holistic as Net Promoter Score for the whole organization. You're doing some training at a very tactical team level, is that starting to influence and improve the net promoter score of the entire organization? But again, the end customer will tell you whether that training worked. You may not like the answer, but that's a subject of different discussion on a different day. We're already quite a ways into the live here, 34 minutes. So we've been talking about how do you measure that your training session was effective, that it really hit the mark to not only help people grow, but to move the organization forwards. And so we've talked about a bunch of different tips, everything from just a quick self-evaluation from you, the trainer, or you, the instructional designer, as soon as the session is over, or as soon as a couple e-learnings have been completed. We've talked about the idea of doing some surveys, really focusing on give me the negatives, what didn't work, what could have been improved, what could have been changed, how could this learning effort been better. We've talked about using metrics, and again, that's the subject of a whole slew of different videos, but really tangibly setting goals for the training and then measuring whether you hit those goals. A million different ways to do that. We've talked about observable behavior changes and really identifying what is the behavior change I'd like to see, and then setting up processes to maybe listen to recorded phone calls or listen, review customer feedback surveys, maybe have some discussions, maybe just spend time, the field manager spend time with the team as they're doing their work and just observe. We've talked about the idea of scorecards to the field managers so that they know what to look for to evaluate that the training was effective. And then we've talked about just communication loops, communication from the managers, the participants of the training event, and the end customer themselves. So lots of different ways to go about it. Hopefully you found this interesting and effective. If you're still in the comments, looks like there's a couple folks out there. Leave me a quick note real quick. If you're finding this helpful, give me a, I was going to say Merry Christmas. Give me a coffee with an exclamation point. If you found this to be helpful, say coffee with an exclamation point. I'm going to take a little coffee myself. All right. So great to have you all out there with us. Corporate training, it is so much more than just delivering information. We have to help people grow, and we have to move the organization and improve the business. And measuring whether your training effort, regardless of whether it's in person, virtual, an e-learning, Lynn is giving me a coffee. Oh, excellent. Oh, Lynn, thank you so much. You are wonderful. Whether it's oh yeah, Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Blue Dunkin' Donuts is my personal favorite coffee. Absolutely love it. And I'm in the northern part of the United States right now, and Dunkin' is on every street corner, everywhere you look. There is a Dunkin' Donuts. But yeah, corporate training, we always have to be measuring the impact, whether it's a quick little session or a full-blown program. I hope everybody has a lovely rest of your weekend. For those of you who are celebrate Christmas, really hope you enjoy that. All the other events that are happening at this time of the year as well. I know a lot of different people celebrate a lot of different things at this time, and I really hope everybody enjoys it, has a great time, gets time with the family, and finds it a time of rest and recuperation and re-energizing. Just really enjoy this time of the season. And then if we don't happen to talk again before the end of the year, I hope everybody has a wonderful start to 2025. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll talk again here real soon. Like, comment, and subscribe here. Don't forget to visit noboringtraining.com, noboringtraining.com. All sorts of free resources. Let's see here. My first microphone? That's a great question, Blue. 2020. sort of during the pandemic time frame. Got my first Rode microphone. Big fan of Rode. I am not affiliated. I am not sponsored. I have nothing to do with that company, but I really like their products. I had a different microphone then, and now I have this one amongst many others. In my studio, I also use Rode microphones. So everybody have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks so much for joining me. Please be sure to visit noboringtraining.com, and I hope you all have a lovely and wonderful rest of your years. Thank you so much.